Springfield man's facing several charges after ramming his truck into a police patrol car. According to police, Dakota Brad confessed to several offenses after being pulled over. It happened Friday night at the intersection of Golden and Sunshine Street. Two patrol cars were parked with emergency lights on, responding to a crash there. Well, the report says Brad crashed his truck into the back of one of those cruisers and kept driving. The officer inside received several injuries to his arm. Brad pulled over further up the road. Police say he confessed to texting and drinking while driving and that he did not have a license. His blood alcohol level was nearly twice the legal limit. He's being held on a $10,000 bond.